And we should be live. We are on. We are on the air. Surprise, surprise, everyone. Anybody coming in here from Bible Every Morning? Carrie, I see you in here already. I was supposed to have an interview that was going to conflict with both Bible Every Morning and this session today. And that interview was postponed. So, Carrie, surprise, surprise, I'm here. And anybody else who jumps in.
I'm surprised you're here.
You were going to have to wing it on your own.
I was going to make my solo debut on This Way Network. I
don't know if you have the technical capability, though. I don't know if you're even listed yet as a producer in the app. So, good morning, Lucas. I see you. And Chris Bounds. They're all
morning, guys. Rick, Lucas, Chris. All
right. Do we have a topic this morning, Joel? Or are we just winging it?
I think we have a topic.
Okay.
Were you not informed of the topic, Mike?
I may have been, but that remains to be seen.
You've had a busy morning, haven't you?
Oh, I've had a kind of busy. Not as busy as it was supposed to be, but still busy. All right, what are we talking about?
Well, I suggested we talk about the border since we're both Southern California dudes, and we're right here on one of the front lines. It's not the big front line; is that other state, that big state to the east. But
Texas.
It's pretty relevant here. So we don't have anyone here calling out the National Guard to defend our border. Here in California, we say, come on in.
Yeah, what Texas is doing will just push everybody westward into New Mexico, Arizona, and California.
Yep.
Right. I mean, Texas has the longest border, obviously. And so it's a good thing that what they're doing. And Arizona has a lot of Republican, Congress people and state senators, etc. And so they do have some influence, but with the Democrat governor, Katie Hobbs, I don't know. She was saying something about the border that, she was saying the right thing about the border a month or so ago. So I don't know where she stands, but I don't have any faith in her to do the right thing. But I certainly know that Gavin Newsom is happy to have an influx because people are fleeing this state. He needs more people coming in than going out. And how is he going to get them in?
Well, he does. The revenue disparity will be pretty stark for him. But, so much of our economy is based on illegal immigration. It's just, and I always say that if those two things if illegal immigration and if we get to a cashless society, the entire economy of Southern California will crash because, the Hispanic population here, they want cash.
Well, I just heard a statistic yesterday or the day before about the class disparity in California is now exceeds some third world countries like the class distinction between the upper class and the lower class.
Yes.
Our middle class, California middle class, is all fled, and then we bring in these impoverished, refugees across the border, which separates the elites in California from the lower. So we literally have a, if anybody thinks Gavin Newsom would be a good president, just look at what he's done to California and the disparity here. It's like,
Well, and people, anybody that's not in California, even people in California don't realize the divide in California is not Northern California and Southern California. It's coastal California, elite coastal, Malibu, La Jolla, San Francisco, Marin County, California, and East California, which down here is El Cajon, up there is Riverside, San Bernardino. I have guys working on my house right now. We're putting an addition on the house. They live in Riverside. They come down every morning, make the 1.5-hour drive, and then they make an 1.5-hour drive back because they can't afford to live in San Diego County, so that's the divide. And it very much is, like you said, it's very much like a third world. It's essentially a third world country now And with all the problems of a third world country, I mean, San Diego a few years back had a giant outbreak of it wasn't cholera. It was
Oh, the
what, what,
like
yeah,
bubonic plague or something.
just
It was like,
some ancient disease you haven't heard of in a long, long time, and because our sewage system was overrun with people living in
rat
canyons,
infested.
and
You know?
and that's the way it is now. So
I'm curious, you know, because we live here, we have seen it happen just over the last 10 years.
yes,
You used to be able to walk around downtown LA, right? You used to be able to just walk around downtown LA. Now there's whole sections of the sidewalk that are impassable because there's just tent cities. And it's like that's not a normal thing, right?
No.
People don't move uh, into tents when when the things are going well. And so we've seen this dramatic shift, and I wonder, with the 100-year storm that we're going through right now, it's like all of that water falling on all those homeless people, like where do they go? What it really tests the infrastructure, the emergency resources of a community. And I can't imagine what's going on in the buildings around those tent cities. It's like, are the people flooding into buildings to get away from the water? Or I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. But the problem down here during this, of course, we had a 100-year storm just last year too. I don't know why they keep calling them 100-year storms when last year we were the month of March 2023, it never stopped raining. So we're just, and this is a cycle, right? I remember 40 years ago, back in the early 80s, we had giant storms like this. But down here we do have tent cities. In downtown San Diego there's not a lot of them. I went to Staples Center last year, and I could not believe I drove through an entire small community of tents. We don't have that yet here. San Diego's always about 5 years behind. But we went blue about 6 or 7 years ago, and sure enough, here comes the tent cities. And we went to a Padre game, and my wife was introduced to poop on the sidewalk for the first time in her life.
Yeah,
and that got her conservative real quick. But no, they mostly live in the canyons down here. Especially where I am, up in North County, San Diego. There's a lot of homeless in canyons, and when it rains, those canyons flood. We had massive damage when the storm drains flooded because no one will clear out the native vegetation that's clogging the storm drains. So I don't know what's happening with the homeless, but they're everywhere, and you see their tents everywhere, but I don't know what happens to them, where they go when it rains like this. I have no idea. So
yeah, there must be some, I mean, every encampment's going to have its own little culture, and who knows what, and the newcomers, where do we go now? Follow I don't know. I just know it's not good.
Yeah, it's not sustainable. And, I hate to use that word. It's such a newsy pundit word, but something's got to give at some point. And like you said, with this disparity between rich and poor, and the middle class, I mean, it is really, I was talking to our daughter the other day, and she's 22, going to be 23. She's just starting her job, and she's got a guy who might be, we're not sure about this guy. He might be the one, right? He's turning on the charm.
You're saying all the right things right now.
Oh yeah. So, and I told her, because I got a tax bill that I wasn't quite expecting to be that high. And I talked to her, I said, I'm not sure how you're going to live here because it is so expensive. And she said, I don't think I will live here. She's thinking more maybe to the east of California and the eastern counties. Because, but there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why it's cheaper to live there. All the action's on the coast here. So, but yeah, so it's just this it's going to be the super rich and super poor, both of whom vote heavily Democrat. Those are the two main constituents of leftward voting. It's people that no longer have to worry about money. You're either so rich that you don't have to worry about money, or you're so poor, you're a dependent class and you're dependent on the government for all your resources. So you're going to vote big government. And that's what California is right now. And it will be more so in the future. So
I look at, like I gauge myself, like I'm a perfect example of like, I am just, because of the job I have, because of the rate that I make, I'm just at the bottom threshold of like middle, kind of upper middle class. For the United States overall, I'm in that, firmly in the, middle to upper middle class, but because of where I live, that amount of money, it's the equivalent of, borderline poverty in any other state. I literally,
you're living paycheck to paycheck, aren't you?
Barely making ends
Yes.
meet, and I'm a renter. I have 3 kids, right? And they're all about to go to college, and I'm like, I don't know if you can get some scholarships, maybe you can go to college, but it's like, I don't have any nest egg. I'm getting nothing. Yeah. So, but I'm trusting in the Lord.
Well, yeah, and that's what all you can do. So I never thought I'd make the amount of money I'm making right now, and I'm basically, it's just enough to cover expenses, and with a little bit, a little bit extra. So compared to the rest of the country, we have relatives obviously all over the country. I have some in Texas, my wife in Indiana, Midwest, and Ohio. You get this idea of California as this sunshine state and palm trees and beaches and all like that. And I'm like, that's such a small part of it. And it's the part you see on TV, because it's the part that Hollywood shows you, as part where Hollywood is and all the people in Hollywood are. But there's this whole other section. You drive from LA to Bakersfield or Fresno, and you'll see it. You'll see the jury-rigged power lines and the big oil slicks from the cooking carts that are there, and they're done. They just dump it out. A guy named Victor Davis Hanson, conservative guy that I hear a lot, he talks about this because he lives there. He said it's basically the third world. You get off the freeway, you get off Interstate 5 in Middle California, you're in the third world, and that's California too.
And nobody's reporting on it, and that's why people don't realize it. There's no reporters down there covering. Well, what are they covering? They're covering whoever's being intolerant of the latest sexual deviant, right?
Yes.
That's like, all right, let's not go in that direction. But I saw an interview with, so Bill Maher had this guy named Patrick Bet-David on. Do you know who Patrick Bet-David is?
Patrick Bet.
Yeah, he's got a podcast. Valuetainment is the name of his podcast, and you might recognize him if you saw him. I didn't know his name for a long time, but Bill Maher had him on, like his own. Like Bill Maher does his show, and then he does his own podcast, like his guests. So he had him on this podcast, and they were talking about Gavin Newsom, and Bill Maher. This guy was asking Bill Maher about Gavin Newsom because that's who Bill Maher thinks should be the Democrat presidential candidate and should be president. The guy's asking him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I interviewed him this last week." And the guy said, "So why do you think?" Patrick Bet-David asked him, "Why do you think Gavin Newsom is your pick?" And Bill Maher's like, "Well, he's a winner." And the guy's like, point blank, is like, "Okay, let's define winning. What exactly does he? Well, he won an election. Like, he would win the president. He would win the election because he is a good campaigner." And so the guy's like, "Okay, so that's your qualification or your criterion, is the guy looks good on camera. He says the right things. Has sex appeal or whatever." And he says, "But what about winning? What are your standards for winning, Bill Maher? You're a successful guy. You've proven your worth, and and he just essentially put Bill Maher on the spot. Bill Maher couldn't say anything. He had nothing. He he's like, yeah, Gavin Newsom's my guy because he could win. Yeah, but what has he done for California? That's what the guy asked him point blank.
Well,
What
because
has he done for California?
Right. Bill Maher is terrified that Donald Trump will be president again.
And
so anybody that can beat Donald Trump is what they want.
It's crazy how somebody who demonstrates some rational faculties can also be so infected with the TDS, right? You can kind of think rationally about any number of things, but if it has to do with Donald Trump, rationality goes out the window completely. We lived in the strongest economy in the history of economies, right? We had the strongest economy in the history of not just the United States, but the world under Donald Trump. We had leftist economists saying that this is the best economy I've ever lived in, right? And that's like, if Trump came out with the cure for cancer, it's like, no, cancer is something we need to embrace. We need to keep cancer around.
Exactly right.
Because it's Donald Trump. It's like insane.
He's intolerant of cancer. Yes. Yeah, right. So.
Right. Right. He's a hater of all those cancer patients.
Yeah, no, I living in California, obviously I am around a lot of very progressive liberal people. And, they can even say, the border is wide open. We've got poop in the middle of the street. We got needles. We have to step around. The economy is it's too expensive to live here. My taxes, are out through the roof. But I'm still going to vote Democrat because I don't want the Republicans to be in office. I'm like, no, of course not, because then things would be bad, right? What are you? It's
How about try something different, California?
No, and you know what it is? Is what really the issue is getting down to in our society is tribalism. Bill Maher's tribe is the Democratic Party, so his tribe needs to win.
Yeah,
and. That's my wife just this morning. She goes, "What's your topic today?" I said, "The border." She goes, "Oh, it all started with the Tower of Babel, didn't it?" I'm like, "That's a really good point, because that's when the divisions started. That's when language separates you. If you can't communicate with a person, you cannot connect with that person." And so we do a tutoring program here. My wife runs, and these young Hispanic kids, these wonderful little cutest kids you've ever seen, innocent and sweet kids. And my wife is blonde, and they are obsessed with her hair. She was just telling me this the other day. These students are obsessed with my hair. They're like, "How do you get your hair so blonde?" Because they're never around anyone with blonde hair. Everyone they know has brown hair. And that's just the way it is. It's
a culture shock.
Yeah, it's a balkanized society that's tribal. And Bill Maher's right. It's my team. My team has to win. Things are much worse with my team in power, but my team has got to win because it's my team. And he doesn't think much beyond that. He does. I mean, Bill Maher's a case study in going to the right, kicking and screaming, but his mind is going to the right, but his will and his emotions can't let go of the left, because that's his identity.
He's living with cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
We all live with certain amounts of cognitive dissonance. If there are things that we don't boil down on, like we have a foundation of belief, things that we believe that are true, and some of it is just intuition, right? And some of it is bearing witness to spirit, and some of it is experience and seeing, the outcomes of certain behaviors. And so, the older you get, the more conservative you are for that reason, right? And young people don't process, don't think through every latest fad or trend or belief that's spouted by their favorite celebrity, right? It's just the blind leading the blind. And
leave Taylor Swift out of this.
I can't. Now that you brought it up, it's just impossible. She's suing some. Did you see about this guy who's has a website? He's like this 21-year-old college student from Florida who has a website that tracks celebrity private jets. Basically, he tracks, because he's like, oh yeah, you and your environmental consciousness, you alone by yourself, here's how much pollution, quote unquote pollution or exhaust or CO2 your private jet has dumped into the atmosphere in the past
I
24
like
hours.
that young man. I like that young man.
So he's about a year ago or so, he started tracking Taylor Swift's jet, and now she's suing him because he's putting her life at risk, right? The stalkers can now find where she's going to be ahead of time, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is this guy is getting data that's publicly available. He's not accessing any private information, nothing exclusive. If you know how to find it, it's there. He was tracking Elon Musk, and Elon Musk a year or two ago had threatened a similar lawsuit. The guy's still doing it. So Taylor Swift's trying to scare this guy. It's how the other half lives. It's like, oh, my life is in danger. Yeah, as you're claiming to be eco-friendly, and that
you're also
pollution-
claiming, you're also claiming that this global warming will kill millions of people, and you're contributing to it. So you're putting them in danger. But they're the little people. They're that other tribe with the different color hair. And
I'm doing more important things, spreading awareness of tolerance. Come love my music, and then whatever else I say.
Yes.
What are you doing for the world?
And by the way, I'm dating Travis Kelce.
Let's not. Actually,
I'm so glad I'm not an NFL fan anymore. I gave up on the NFL about when they took the Chargers out of here and started kneeling for the anthem. I said, I've watched enough football in my life. I don't have to do that anymore. So
funny. Our house
yeah. So, but that's again, like I said, it's cognitive dissonance. It's this thing of lack of awareness of what your voting does and what who you're listening to, the echo chamber you're in, and it's self-perpetuating, because nobody within that bubble will ever say, hey, wait a minute, what are we doing? Why are we flying all these private jets? I just had a revelation. My private jet is contributing to global warming. Why am I doing that? That would never happen.
Yeah, I think, why would the Obamas buy beachfront property, right? Why would you buy beachfront property if you actually believe that sea levels are rising at a catastrophic rate? And
hey, I will give them $500,000 for their Martha's Vineyard house right now, because in 10 years it'll be worthless because it'll be flooded, right?
Right. Yeah, let me take that off your hands.
Let me take it off your hands. Exactly.
It was a bad investment. Well, it makes me laugh that when this storm that we're kind of in the middle of right now, I think it's supposed to go on a few more days or something. When it's, was projected ahead of the Grammys, I guess it was Grammy Day on Sunday when the storm really began in earnest. And the headlines I'm seeing are like, deadly storm, right? Deadly storm, or, and it's, killer storm. I'm like, okay, every storm is, technically potentially deadly, right? A storm is a storm is a storm, but it's to maintain the fear-mongering narrative, right? It's just a storm. Rain is a blessing from God. It's like, we need the rain, we need the water, especially in California, where we've misspent our infrastructure, budget on, trains that go nowhere, instead of building more dams and levees so that we don't, in about a month and a half, they'll be talking about drought again. I'm like,
drought
what?
again, yeah.
Drought?
No, I was just thinking that the other day. The narrative was always, the drought, California's gonna dry up. There's not gonna be any more rain. And then all of a sudden we have 2 years. The last 2 years have been massive amounts of rain. But it's funny. I was looking at rainfall, because I seem to remember when I was back in the 80s, when I was here, we had massive storms back then. And sure enough, there was annual rainfall was more in the 80s than it is now. So because it's a cycle, it's about a 40-year cycle. And I remember reading in Time magazine back in the 80s, when that was a big storm, that California will now go through a 40-year period of heavy rainfall. And California was built on a dry period, and now we'll have 40 years of heavy rainfall. And that was 40 years ago, and we didn't have it. nobody knows what's going to happen with climate. They don't know from day to day almost, but for sure
The
not from season to season, because they
the
weren't predicting
complexity,
this. They
yeah,
were not predicting this.
the
Yeah.
complexity of ecosystems and cycles.
Anyway, we're on a tangent. We got off the board.
Well, I like this tangent anyway. Oh,
Okay,
that's
go.
another.
You
Well,
go.
another thing is, all of these are eco refugees, right? Isn't that one of the arguments? They're escaping the devastation of the environment in their home countries or something.
Is that okay? I'm
That's
maybe,
that's one of the
maybe, yeah.
arguments. They're escaping to the first world country. I don't know,
Right.
but I want to just briefly before we're done here. I was listening to I forget who it was, a scientist talking about the sun and the earth and what types of cycles there are. Like you and I, the average person, we know a day is a rotation, right? At 24 hours, that's one of the cycles that we experience. And then we experience the lunar, right? Like there's months are based on the lunar cycle.
Mhm.
And then we have an annual cycle. We go around the sun. And those are some normal cycles. But there's all of these other uh, factors that are actually larger cycles than those, even in a year. For example, where Saturn is, or Jupiter, the largest planet, where Jupiter is in relation to the Earth, as the Earth rotates the Earth, Jupiter's on a separate orbit, and so there's a cycle there that expands out to hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, right? And so even every one of our seasons is slightly different. We feel like there's some normalcy because of the year cycle and the seasonal cycle and the elliptical shape of our orbit. But with all of these other factors, the other planets all have a magnetic pull, gravitational pull on all the other planets. And so to gauge with precision, there's no such thing as normal, right? There is no such thing as a normal weather pattern, seasonal pattern. There's always these minor perturbations and
Mhm.
effects that change it slightly. And so for somebody to say that humans are changing the weather patterns because of this tiny bit of exhaust, right, that we emit that actually brings life, right? CO2 is the life.
Yes.
With zero CO2, there's nothing green, right? There's nothing green
No,
on the
it is.
planet. If you go to net zero, you go to black, dark death.
And yet
Right?
that
That's
has
it.
been classified as a pollutant years ago.
Yeah.
Carbon
Right.
dioxide, yeah. Carbon monoxide, yes. Carbon dioxide, no. Yeah.
So Trump's going to win. Borders are going to get closed. There's my
Your lips to God's ears, as I always say.
right. Trump's going to win, and the border's going to.
But boy, they're going to fight. Oh, they're going to fight tooth and nail to not make that happen, man. And obviously there are drawbacks to illegal immigration. One we haven't even talked about, which is the human trafficking aspects. Which, when someone starts arguing for an open border, I'm like, that just infuriates me, because like, you're arguing for human trafficking. That, don't you?
Yep.
And like I said, the income disparity and the health problems and all that it brings. But it isn't. This is how God works. God's people are always disobedient to His commands. It goes back all the way back through the nation of Israel, right? And no, all the way back. But God is bringing the third world to our doorstep, and because we won't go, He's bringing them to our doorstep with all the inherent problems that we're going to have. But at the same time, He's also bringing people who, and this is one thing the left doesn't understand. They're bringing in people that are not going to understand all your sexual deviancy, and they're not going to be sympathetic to it, and you're not going to get anywhere with them. So, but it is an opportunity for those of us who are Christians and who have a kingdom mindset to share the kingdom with these people who are coming.
Yeah, that's the beauty, is the social the social standards of a lot of the people coming. Their social conservatives, right? They believe in the family.
Yes,
They
very much so.
believe in how they actually believe in science and XY and a XX and a XY chromosome, right? They believe in a man and a woman, united by God, right? And so they may think they're going to pad their numbers, but it always works out in our favor demographically. All right. We hate to see the changing demographic in the way that it's happening, but we do know that God is in control. And so it's good to see you, Joel.
Michael, good to see you too.
We'll talk again. We'll text back and forth later today. All right. Bye, everybody.
All right.
We are out of here.
Thanks.